messed that up. I was looping everything. So, all right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Cinema Crusaders. It is Friday afternoon here in Southern California. It is Friday evening over there on the East Coast. Somewhere in the world, it is Saturday morning, but wherever it is, it's time for a little bit of Cinema Crusaders. Now, for all of you who are going to tune in today, and thank you if you are, we, as you might have known from the little bit of advertising and stuff we did, we're going to talk about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Unfortunately, the pod people got the movie, and we weren't all able to be ready to talk about it today, which is fine. We get more time to prepare. We can run. We can make sure that Donald Sutherland's meme doesn't get us. And until then, we are going to call a little bit audible, and we are going to be doing the Fantastic Four review today. So, spoiler alert, everybody. If you haven't seen Fantastic Four, bookmark this video. Go watch it when you're ready, and then come back and share this review with us, because I don't want to spoil it for everybody. So I want to tell everybody right up front again, we're doing Fantastic Four review today because we had to call a little bit of an audible on till next week for Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And Fantastic Four is still technically a science fiction movie, so we're fine. We're still in our theme. So we're going to do Fantastic Four. Spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it, bookmark this. When you've watched the movie, come on back and join us, and we will talk a little bit about Fantastic Four. So with that, before we get into the whole movie and everything and start talking about it, I have to bring in my co-host. Now, I want to give a shout out to Jeff Bracey. Can't wait till you're back, brother. We miss you. You know, you are always welcome back. And we are looking forward to the time when you can come back and join us on Cinema Crusaders. Lance Lucero, our other Cinema Crusader, is very busy out there making movies and doing all that this summer, and we are very proud of everything he's doing. But I am joined by my fellow role player, a fellow author, writer, educator. Ooh, look at that word. I'm talking about none other than Steve Jadewing Sellers. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing it pretty good. I wish I had been as ready for Invasion of the Body Snatchers as I want it to be. So this is my fault, guys. Sorry. No, yeah, I think it's kind of worth the wait because I have seen some of it, and I'm kind of looking forward to discussing that. But I would rather be like completely ready to dive into it in the deep way that we normally do. So hopefully it'll be worth the wait.
Full disclosure, last week, I had gone to see actually Fantastic Four on Friday and forgot about the Puppet Masters that we were reviewing. I came home and watched the whole movie on double speed. So yeah. So that's how I got.
And I'll also add, there is the Puppet Master name keeps getting thrown around, and on top of that, since we're talking about Fantastic Four, there is a villain of the Fantastic Four named the Puppet Master.
Ooh.
And he's actually name dropped in this movie.
Cool. All right. So Fantastic Four, for everybody who doesn't know, for all of you who have been under a comic book or rock, as it were, is the newest movie out from Marvel. We are not, I think I'm comfortable in saying this, we are not going to make any comparisons between Fantastic Four and Superman. They're two movies that stand on their own. We're not going to hate on one to love on the other. We're not going to hate on DC to love Marvel or vice versa. We're just going to talk about Fantastic Four in its own right. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about the movie, what we liked, what we might not have liked, and where we're coming from on it. So
I like both, so I have no intention of denigrating either one.
No, I never thought you did. I just had to get it out there because, as you all know, if you're on social media, good luck, first of all. And second of all, everybody loves to just dunk on everybody else on there. And that's not what we're about here. We like movies in general, and we just like talking about movies. And we also like comic books. So this is right up our wheelhouse. So before I get going, Fantastic Four, the basic plot of this movie. Once again, I'm going to say, spoiler alert, everyone. The Fantastic Four have been a team for a while. They actually show some vignettes of them doing some heroic things, of creating the Future Foundation, That's right. Future Foundation, correct?
That's it. It's an idea that came from the Jonathan Hickman run. I want to say in the mid 2000s, but yeah.
They show defeating Mole Man. They show that Mole Man is like, I'm going to call it right now. Mole Man is like borderline in love with Sue Storm. And they do all this, and then we get right into the movie itself, and a lot of this movie is at the beginning is about their family dynamic and finding out that Sue is pregnant with Franklin, and all of that. And eventually, the Herald of Galactus, and I can't remember the Silver Surfer's name, this one, but the Silver Surfer shows up. Yeah, Hellaball shows up, and Johnny falls in love with the, and they find out that Galactus is on his way. And so the Fantastic Four take off in Excelsior, their ship, and they find Galactus out there eating another planet or destroying another planet and consuming it. And they attempt to negotiate. And the price that he asks to spare Earth is that he wants Franklin Richards, because he thinks that Franklin is going to be the successor to Galactus, so he can finally, because he's got the Force Cosmic in him, Galactus can finally rest. He doesn't have to destroy planets all the time, and that Franklin will take over this role. And the Fantastic Four don't agree to this. When the people of Earth find out that they're living under a death sentence at the moment because of a baby, they don't take it too well. And long story short, eventually they banish Galactus. And Sue, there's a big spoiler alert, dies. She's actually dead. And Franklin brings her back to life with his baby Jesus powers. So I think that's, in about a minute, that's a pretty good summary of the movie. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that pretty much describes everything. Yeah, we'll get into like the differences, with the comic and what they changed and what about all that annoyed me and what I liked. But yeah, that's generally pretty solid.
So let's start off right off the bat. I'm going to let you go first. A, because you're more of a Fantastic Four person than I am. So I want to get your opinion out there first. And B, because you are my co-host. So give me your general thoughts on this movie and how you would, let's do an A through F rating as far as the movie itself, like where you would rate it. So, but first your general opinion of the movie, and then, what your grade for the movie would be.
Well, I will say coming in, I had very, very low expectations. I have low expectations for the MCU in general. I have low expectations for anything out of Disney in general these days. I mean, ever since Eternals, I've just kind of felt like that, which I hated. I just really have not had a very high opinion of them. So coming in, it was just like, all right, I'm going to give this a chance. In the hope that, they're finally going to change directions, because they really needed, the kind of movie that would bring people back to the seats. And it turned out it wasn't that bad. There were changes I didn't like. I'm not a huge fan of what they did with the Silver Surfer. I'm not a huge fan of, certain things that they did to the lore and, certain, character choices that they could have made. But in terms of the core four, in terms of the family dynamic, in terms of, how the main characters are usually portrayed in the story and in the universe, I thought they handled that really well. I thought that every character got something to do. It wasn't one of those things where it's just like, this is the Sue Richards show, and this is Sue and her amazing friends, and Pedro Pascal is her little sidekick. No, they didn't do any of that. If you're worried about that they pulled a whole bunch of girl boss nonsense, they didn't. They made her powerful, but powerful in a way that is consistent with what's been shown in the comics. She has always been kind of like this. And at the same time, she's not, completely unbeatable or, so much more powerful than everyone else that she overshadows them. Everyone in this movie had something to do that was consistent with who they were and their character arc. So I was just like, that was good. I enjoyed that. It's really just kind of like the side stuff around them, that I had, quibbles about and here and there. But I think the core of it worked.
Cool. What would you give it for a grade or a rating? You know, it doesn't have to be a grade necessarily, just your rating. You know, with your A being your top tier movie that, yeah, let's do it. I'll say A is your top tier movie where you're like, you would watch this movie the minute it's on, you're going to sit down and watch it no matter what. F is burn it, kill it, exercise it, call it old priest and a young priest, and make sure it never sees a light again. So
yeah, F sounds like Eternals to me. No, B is more B. I would say B. I liked it for the most part, but it's like, yeah, it's not one of those that's going to stick with me in terms of being my favorite adaptation. I will say that it manages to be way better than Fan Four Stick, which is another one that would be an F.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, this movie really benefited from really low expectations, both because of Marvel and because the last Fantastic Four attempt was so bad.
Okay. So for me, here's what I will say. I want to get this right up front. I don't hate the Fantastic Four. I want to be clear on that. I'm not the biggest Fantastic Four fan in the world. And the thing that was interesting about this movie, and I think one of the best things about this movie, is it made very clear in my mind that A, this was a Fantastic Four movie, and B, it really clarified for me why I'm not the biggest Fantastic Four fan in the world, you know? And that sounds really weird, like a backhanded compliment, but it's not, because it was like, this is exactly what I would expect, you know, or at least 80 or 90% of it from a Fantastic Four movie. And I was like, it's a comic book movie. And so I enjoyed it for that. So I'm just going to say there were some enjoyable moments. It's a movie that I sat, I did have fun. I did enjoy it. It's just Fantastic Four is not necessarily my cup of tea. And when we get into characters and the actors, I could talk about it. As far as the plot and holding it together, I have to be. I thought that it was a well-constructed movie. I think it was a very beautiful movie. I was a little shocked and surprised at how good the writing was. I thought it was pretty tight. In fact, that's how I would describe the movie in general. It was tight. It was focused. It moved along. Even though the first act is kind of slow because of what they're concentrating on, it builds, and I think it described the Fantastic Four well. You know, so I as a moviegoer, I couldn't complain. So, like I said, it's just one of those things where I'm like, oh, it's Fantastic Four. So, you know,
it's the coming of Galactus, just very shaved off, I would say.
Yeah,
minimalist coming of Galactus.
Yeah, but you know, and we're gonna get into talking about the effects and everything. I thought they were very good. Someone said that this was like peak Marvel Phase 1. I don't know that I would go that far, but if you ask me what peak Marvel Phase 1 was, I would probably give you a different answer than most, because I think Captain America and Thor were the best Phase 1 Marvel movies, which is not a popular sentiment for the most part. So
I don't entirely disagree. I prefer Avengers, but I completely love both of those movies, so I get it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons I love Thor and Captain America is it felt so much like what I would expect the comic book, what I imagine in my head when I would read comic books of Thor and Captain America. And I'm also a fan of Thor, Captain America, you know, so it's like they really appealed to me. Avengers is something that I've come to later in life because I was always more of a Justice League fan. So, you know, it was what it was.
Totally get that.
That said, I would say my rating, it's funny because we come at it from different perspectives, but I would also say this is a B movie. You know, it's a solid comic book movie. If I'm looking for something to do, I would rewatch this movie. You know, it's not going to be my go-to, but I was a little bit surprised, and in a good way, you know, for a lot of reasons. So with that, I want to go straight into characters, and I want to go straight to, at least for our little group here, that, you know, our friend group that we talked to, the big old matzo ball in the room. named Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
When they announced Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, the collective eye roll from our friend group, could have like strained our eyes and had them roll right out of our faces. We were like, "Are you
Yes.
kidding me?"
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. I'm going to kick it to
Mhm.
you in a second, but I thought
Sure.
that he did very well in the role. I believe that he was a Reed Richards, which I never thought I would say. They even let him have some scruff on the side of his face, which made up for the fact that he never shaves that mustache. And so he felt like Reed, because he had the beard almost, which I liked.
Mhm.
My biggest complaint about Reed is my biggest complaint about Reed in every Fantastic Four movie I've ever watched, which is he's Mr. Fantastic. Have him do something fantastic, uh, with his stretchy powers, do something. And there was one moment when Galactus is moving across the street and everybody's taken out. And I'm like, Reed could stretch across the entire street and try and constrict him or stop him.
Mhm.
There's a whole host of things you could do. So, and I'm not even a big Fantastic Four fan, and I knew that. So I was like, yeah.
Mhm.
So that's the way I felt about it. But overall, as far as performance, I get a good grade for me. I enjoyed it. What about you?
Yeah, I will say, like, I didn't come in hating the Pedro Pascal choice as much as everyone else in our group was. Just at the same time, I think my eye rollingness of it came from the fact that it seems like they want to cast him in like every dad role in the world now. Like every action adventure dad is Pedro Pascal, because it's like, yeah, he's Din Djarin, he was Joel from Last of Us. Okay, yeah, let's make him Reed Richards. And it's
Right.
like I understood where everybody was coming from on that. I think my old thing was just the overuse of him, and feeling like we had John Krasinski, and he was killed in Multiverse of Madness in just the most stupid way imaginable. Like everybody who was killed there was killed, but it was especially bad because it came across as an FU to a lot of people who wanted Krasinski in the role instead. And I can't help but think of how well he would have done. That said, I think that Pascal kind of realized that he had to live up to the expectations and that make this more than just a cash in, with Disney money.
Yeah.
So I think he actually put in the work to make Reed the character from the comics as much as he was able to. And I think he did a reasonable job. And especially when you start getting into the fact that, yeah, he's clueless, because it's like he's the big brain and he's always thinking, in these huge scientific terms, in terms of the discoveries, in terms of what he's making. And it's just like, yeah, and he doesn't know how to be a dad. He's trying to figure out how to be a dad.
Yeah.
And I think that they found that really good balance of him, the social awkwardness versus the fact that this is the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, Reed needed that, how to be a dad for scientific dummies book or something, So
yeah.
What did you
I'm going
think
to childproof the entire house, with my fancy gadgets. I'm like, that's totally Reed. Yeah, I got
that. What did you think of Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm / Sue Richards?
Yeah, I will say, prior to Vanessa Kirby, I really hadn't been sold on anyone that had been in the role as like, yeah, this is the Invisible Woman.
Okay.
You
didn't like Jessica Alba as
she was fine. Like they were like she was fine. I didn't hate her. I mean, I didn't love her, but she was fine.
Yeah.
But I feel like Kate Mara was okay given the horrendous material she was given. But I will say I think that this is the best version of Sue that I've seen so far. Like I think she got the character like absolutely better than I would have expected. Like the strength there, the passion there, that speech that she made about I'm not going to sacrifice the world for the sake of my child, but I'm not going to sacrifice my child for the sake of the world. The fact that like we're going to find a better way to do this. I thought that was really, really cool, and I think that she really kind of earned that place. like, I was never really into the whole, yeah, she's really the big leader that everybody was kind of pushing her as.
Right.
I kind of feel like she and Reed have a system that works for them, which is basically Reed is the guy that leads the team, that, leads the adventures and, does all the discoveries. And she's the one who's making sure the family works, and this is what she does better than everybody else. And she's also a really good diplomat. I mean, because she is so attuned with people more than anybody else in the group. So yeah,
Right.
so her being an ambassador and all that comes from Hickman. That I did kind of buy that, even if it was a little bit rushed at times. I thought that worked. But I mean, but I think the primal thing is that when it first shows the sub, she is more powerful when she's being a mother and her child is threatened.
Yeah.
And this is kind of why I thought that last moment with her, being the final push against Galactus really sold it, was because that was a Sue Richards moment.
Okay.
When my child is in danger, I am going to do everything I can. I am going to move heaven and earth to save my child, even if it costs me my life. And that is how Sue would go out. Absolutely.
Fair. I will say now. Please stop me if I'm doing this. I don't want this to be a therapy session on why the Fantastic Four isn't my thing, but
Fair.
as a general rule, I'll just say I don't find Reed Richards in comics or movies as a particularly likable character. So
A lot of people don't.
And I like Sue. And a little bit of Fantastic Four and other stuff that I have read at different times, particularly Civil War, where Sue and Reed get into it over what's going on over the negative zone prison that they set up and all the other stuff.
I hated that, by the way. I felt like Reed has social conscience. He's not that kind of guy.
Well, I felt though that these interactions between Vanessa Kirby and Pedro Pascal, really had that chemistry, that real relationship feel that I thought I was looking for. And I think a lot of that, not all of it, because Pedro Pascal did his part, but it was driven by her.
They have real chemistry. I think that made a big difference.
Yeah, and her reactions to how Reed would handle stuff and do things, I felt like they were really in a relationship. And it rang true. So I appreciated that. And I think a lot of it goes down to, like I said, Vanessa Kirby's performance in this. I thought it was fantastic. As far as, Sue in this as well, I also agree with you. I thought she was incredibly powerful. I'm just going to get this out right up front, though. It's like another thing for me with Fantastic Four is that never really bought into them being the powerhouses that they're made out to be, to stop Galactus. So even though she's at her most powerful, as not a Fantastic Four reader, I have a hard time reconciling Sue Storm moving Galactus. Maybe that's comics accurate, and I'll just leave it at that.
But there's been a power creep with her over the years. She's gotten more powerful with her abilities over time. But I really think, as far as what you're saying, I think a lot of what makes them work is individually they're not really that powerful. What makes it work is that they have this whole family and teamwork element, and the fact that they have Reed calling the shots and he's the smartest guy in the room.
Okay, that's fair. But I'll say that even coming into it with that in mind, it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie. It was like it wasn't something so ridiculous where I was just like, come on now, like if Hawkeye had jumped up and punched out Galactus, then I would have been like, come on, what are we doing? It's like suddenly Hawkeye can one punch Galactus. I would have been like, come on. But no, I mean, I was never like that here. So, but I enjoyed it. I thought she was good. I thought that the look of her as Sue was good as well. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but they had a blonde white woman play Sue Storm. So, and she looked like Sue Storm. So, kudos.
Yeah. She looked like she stepped off the page. Yeah.
Yeah. Next, I want to go. Who do I want to go to? I'm going to go to her brother next. I'm going to go Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, Human Torch. I think this guy, for me, now out of all the Fantastic Four, as a kid, my favorite was always Johnny Storm. So I loved him as Johnny Storm. And not only that, I don't think he was written as one dimensional. You know, he wasn't just chasing tail and being a moron. You know, he had some more elements to him. He actually did care about the family in his own way. I love the shtick he gives his brother-in-law. You know, not shtick, stick. He gives his brother-in-law. I just loved a lot of this performance. I thought it was really, really good. I know that Johnny Storm is another one of these people that has had power creep over the years, you know. So I think you can see that here to a certain extent. But his overall look was really, really good. I thought the performance was great. I thought that what the writers wrote for him in the movie was great. The way he approached the Silver Surfer was very good. Even if you don't like that Silver Surfer, it felt everything between the two of them in the movie felt earned and organic. So I appreciated that, even if I wanted to, you know, was it Norrin Rand is the
Norrin Rad.
Yeah, Rad is the original Silver Surfer. So yeah, so I mean, just to be upfront, you're not going to hear a bad thing from me about any of the Fantastic Four cast. So, you know,
no,
I'll just say
nor
that.
me, really.
Yeah. So, what did you think of Joseph Quinn as Johnny?
He was pretty good. I will say, like, Chris Evans, I think, is still a really great Human Torch, and he's usually mentally my go-to. Not as much as he is for Cap, but I mean, I think he definitely was the standout of the original 2005 film. So it's like that's a high bar you have to meet in order to work. This guy, I don't think he's quite up at that level, but he did really well. And what put him over was that, yeah, he was written really well. And a lot of it is that Johnny's one of the few characters in the main four that I kind of have issues with. And it's mainly because in the comics, he's written in this circular way where he never seems to learn anything for any consistent amount of time. Because and it's the writer's fault. It's not the character's fault. It is the writer's fault, because what ended up happening is they just basically want to reset him to the beginning every single time they start their run. And then he goes back to being an immature idiot, not having learned anything from the last run. So, I'm glad to see that they did not do that in this movie. You know, he seems to embody like some of the ideas that Mark Waid gave the character during his run. And I think that really was a genuine attempt to get Johnny Storm out of the doldrums he was in for so long. And one of the ideas that he had was that, yeah, let's have him run the business because he understands systems. He's a mechanic. He understands all these other things, you know, and because he understands, you know, he's a gifted mechanic, and he understands, you know, the various pieces and abilities that go into being a mechanic. It also carries over into other things. They did that here by having him basically be, yeah, I'm the one who's going to translate the language. That's interesting. I was like, that's a clever thing to do with him. You know, I would have thought that like maybe somebody like Sue would do that, but no. They gave that job to Johnny, and they gave him an emotional, you know, reason why he would do this. Even if I'm like, you know, this is Girl of the Week, Johnny Storm stuff, and I'm kind of tired of that. I can see why they did it, and I can see where they were coming from, and they gave him something to do that actually made a difference. And he made a difference not by flaming on, but by actually using the brain that he pretends he doesn't have. and I like that the fact that they show that there are depths. This guy is an astronaut. He's an impulsive fool sometimes. And he doesn't listen to people, you know, and he goes half cocked. But deep down, he really does have depth to him and cleverness when he's called on to do it. And I was glad to see that.
I also think Johnny is, you know, this is from my, you know, cursory reading of Fantastic Four, but they're all heroic and brave, but Johnny is like the most out there, like into being a hero and being a superhero, and he exhibited that at the end as well. You know, I'm not going to spoil that part, but it was
He
like,
likes being a celebrity, always has.
yeah, but he was going to make the call to sacrifice himself. You know, so I like that. So I enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
when
I
push
thought
comes
Johnny
to
was good.
shove, every single member of the Fantastic Four will give whatever everything they have, including their lives, to the rest of their family.
Yeah. So I thought that was really good. I do agree with you that I think Chris Evans still is the one who looks most the part, but I think as far as writing, I think this is the best written I've ever seen Johnny Storm in a movie.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's better written than most of his comics.
Yeah. Finally, for the last member of the actual team, I gotta find the name of the guy real quick. Why can't I find it? This is crazy. They didn't listen. Oh, there he is. Evan Moss Bachrock as man, that sounds like the Thing. As Ben Grimm, aka the Thing. I'm gonna kick it over to you first on talking about Ben. So
yeah, I think he was when it comes to the Thing, I think Michael Chiklis is kind of generally what I think of, because really the thing with the Thing is he's basically Jack Kirby, you know, sort of in Orange Rock. You know, he draws. I think he's probably the most Kirby of the four, in terms of personality. You know, he's the guy that you know is salt of the earth, literally, very much so, and he always has been. But at the same time, you also see that underneath that he has a deep heart, and there's a lot of love that he has, especially for his family, especially for the people that he lets in, and we kind of see that. And part of it also, and then the reason this actor was cast is because of his Jewishness. Because he was based on Kirby, and Kirby was Jewish as well. Ben Grimm has been, written as Jewish at least since around the Mark Waid run, kind of in the middle of that. And
I appreciated that as well. So
yeah. My only thing with the way that they did that is because I thought that the love interest that he had should have been a different character. We'll get into that. Natasha Lyonne should have been Alicia Masters, but we'll just kind of leave that aside. But I think the way that they wrote him, this is the most subdued thing I've ever seen. And in a way that's kind of interesting, because normally he's the guy who's like, it's clobbering time. And he's the one always throwing the punches. I didn't really like that they subdued that they tried to make him say, distance himself away from that cat rage, because to me it's iconic. It is so much who Ben is. But they had him embrace it at the end, which was nice. So, but aside from that, I kind of felt like they this is a different kind of Ben, who I think is more the rock which holds everyone up. He supports everyone in his own way. He supports his best friend in times of trouble. He supports Susie, when she's struggling with the baby, and being a supportive, uncle and godfather to the child. All of that. So he is all of that, and he roughs it, and he gets mixed up with Johnny from here and there. It's not as much as we've seen like in the 2005 movie, but there's still a bit of that, which was nice. But at the same time, it's like it is a very subdued version of Ben, which in good and bad ways, but not absolutely the best. But Ben is one of my favorite characters, and I thought he was given justice. That having been said, I think the CGI for this version of the Thing actually is like the closest I've seen to them getting Thing comics accurate.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, I don't, we'll get into the visual effects in a little bit, but it looked like the Thing just leaped right out of the page of a comic book to me. It's a far cry from the orange suit in the original Fantastic Four movie. No hating on it, because they were limited by what they could do. But it's like I look at that. I look at that and I see that and how good it looked, and I'm like, can we go back and reshoot the original Suicide Squad and give me an actual Killer Croc, please? That's what I want. So I want Killer Croc, not whatever the dude in the suit was. So
And they did the thing in the trench coat, which is another iconic thing.
Yeah.
Actually influenced Raphael from the Turtles.
Yeah. What I will say about Ben, just as a general rule, for me, the two most interesting characters for me personally in Fantastic Four have always been Ben and Johnny Storm. I thought it was interesting in this one, and that Reed is the brain of the group. That's how they wrote him. Sue is the heart of the family. I'm almost gonna say, Johnny is the hands. He's the one who's taking action and doing stuff. But Ben has got the pulse of the public more than any of them in this movie. And I thought that was really interesting because he's the one who is the most foreign to the public. He's the one who's changed forms the most and everything. And yet he had his pulse more on what was going on in the public. He was more in touch with the man on the street. He's the only one we ever see really walking the streets and being in touch with people. So
he is the heart of a regular guy underneath the rock monster appearance, which I think is absolutely reflective.
And for me, I would say that he stole the show for me, as far as the character that I just loved every moment he was on the screen. And it was not the moments where he was fighting and doing stuff like that. I just love seeing him in those moments, interacting with the kids, going to the temple, as they're preparing to fight. All of those things, I was just like, I like this. I really like this version of Ben, and the way it was written. And once again, I haven't said this about a Marvel movie in a long time, but it's like, this movie was written well. It was. So, congratulations to them on that. They got to, when we criticize them when they deserve it, but when they do stuff well, we need to call it out as well. So, right. I think that it was.
I came in trying to not like it, and they proved me wrong. I'm more than willing to give them their points on that.
Absolutely. All right. Before we move on for characters, I don't want to gloss over everybody else, but there's other characters. But is there anybody that would stand out for you? I mean, we've got Galactus, Mole Man. Anybody that you want to talk about real quick before we move on to some other things to do with the movie?
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about Silver Surfer. The
okay.
What
was her name?
The elephant in the room. Yeah, Shala Bal. Yeah,
Julia Garner.
Julia Garner. Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, it's like, Shala Bal in the comics was Norrin Radd's love interest for a while, at least until, he left his planet and weird things happened. But we're not going to really get into that. It seemed like and that version of the character to me is just so much more interesting and iconic. And, the sequel to the 2005 film, I want to say, was The Rise of the Silver Surfer. That is the real Norrin Radd. This version has elements of him attached to a character that has nothing to do with this story. Because and I could tell, and I understand why they did this. It was because they wanted the love interest for Johnny, because that's how it rolls. I don't think he necessarily needed one, though, and I don't think either. And I don't think that there really was a convincing romance here anyway. You would have been just better off playing it straight. That having been said, I think that they played the power of the Surfer beautifully. The Surfer looks good, especially when she's doing like her wave riding in hyperspace, doing the chases with the Excelsior, which, by the way, I love that they call their ships the Excelsior.
We will get more into the effects in a little bit, but I agree with you. I do have a critique on the look of the character, but I'm going to wait for that. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and I will also say that if you wanted a Herald of Galactus that was Johnny's love interest, there actually was one. Her name was Nova, and she was the granddaughter of the person who created the original Human Torch. And by the way, the original Human Torch is in Marvel, is in MCU continuity, because we see that him in the beginning of First Avenger. So she should exist. There is no reason that even in this alternate timeline that there wouldn't be a version of her.
I will say this real quick, and then we'll go on to who I want to select, and then we'll move to a different topic. But about this character, this is the one thing I thought that they fell down with the writing. They tried to give us her backstory a little bit, and cut it extremely short. And I'm like, either give us something that has some meat on the bones, so we care more about the character, or just cut it out, because I really don't think we needed to know her backstory. To be honest with you, at all. So it's like, either give it to us, or if you don't have the time, cut it out. So
yeah, they needed they should have hewed closer to Coming of Galactus as it was in the comics, and this is why I think you needed Alicia Masters. And it really kills me that they had Natasha Lyonne, who could have played a wonderful Alicia. She looked the part. She would have been freaking perfect in that role, and they just didn't. They turned her into this other character that is not consequential at all. And she would have been consequential because it was Alicia's involvement with the surfer, her meeting with him, that changes him and convinces him to save Earth. If that had been properly adapted, I think this movie would have gone from a B to an A.
Yeah. All right. The character I want to talk about really quick, and I'm going to talk about this a lot more in the visual effects, but I think I need to talk about it from writing and role as well, is this gentleman's name, who I'm going to look up real quick because I don't want to mess it up. Ralph Ineson, who played Galactus. It seems like playing Galactus should be a slam dunk easy one, because Galactus is just this giant colossal cosmic entity who's going around doing stuff. But I think there are subtleties to the role that I didn't realize till I watched this movie, that you needed to be able to be huge, a ginormous, dangerous presence, but still be able to emote without emoting. Does that make sense?
Sure. Think Iron Man and the Mandalorian.
Yeah, and we're gonna get this in the visual effects, but the whole suit was practical, and I, for the first time in my life, believed that I actually was seeing Galactus on screen so much better than whatever they did with the in the Eternals. With the gosh, why am I
Celestial?
Yeah, the Celestial. But when they met Galactus on his ship, you could see when Galactus loses his temper, and he never emotes it. It's just little things in the face and the eyes, and it was all performances of Ralph Ineson. And even though he has limited screen time, he is a presence on screen that brings the stakes that the movie needed at that point in the movie. I really bought in at that point. So suddenly I went from a family movie, which is the first part, to holy shit, they're in trouble. And in a way that the Silver Surfer never really. I mean, the Silver Surfer annoyed me at times. I was like, excuse my language, bitch, please get out of here. So it's like, and I understand that Silver Surfer is incredibly powerful, no matter what version we're talking about. But the Galactus one, I was like, I really appreciated it, and he reminded me of another character that became incredibly large and had that kind of emotionless emotion. And I can't remember the damn guy's name now, but remember the main henchman of the MC, or not the of the bad guy in Tron. The one that eventually grew to be huge. Whatever that guy. I'm going to look up his name in a minute, but it reminded me of that kind of performance. And that guy's an incredible performer and actor. And this guy, seeing him, I was like, and this is always the problem I have with a lot of these villains, is that they disappear off screen. And I was like, I want that. I want more of these villains. I want to see them again. I don't know. Maybe we will see him again, because he doesn't die, which is, I'm
not sure you can kill him anyway. So
yeah. So I don't know. What did you think of Ralph Ineson as Galactus?
Oh, he was great. And I will say they did such a good job. One of the interesting things that I had seen is that Iman Vellani had said that finally they had done him justice, and basically kind of redeemed him after that whole stupid thing of him being a cloud in Rise of the Silver Surfer. I think that's going to be like most fans' view of this, and I think that definitely was true. Innocent absolutely brought it. I felt like they did a good job actually giving him a costume that looked like Galactus. They didn't stick him into something stupid and and subdued and just nothing and was just like monochrome. There was none of that. He looked like a Kirby character. He had the scale of a Kirby character, and the whole business where they drop him in next to Liberty Island, and the Statue of Liberty. He's looking at the Statue of Liberty, and it's just, I mean, I really dug that sort of moment because it shows you the scale of what you're dealing with. This guy being dropped in the water probably caused a tsunami doing that.
Yeah.
But it was just really, really great.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was one of the most memorable moments, and I had already been spoiled to see Galactus in previews, and it was still memorable for me. So that's how good it was. The character or the actor I was thinking of, his name is David Warner. He's been in Tron, Time Bandits, The Omen, Titanic. He played Dillinger and then Master Control in Tron.
David Warner is a legend. I love that guy. He was very briefly in The Mouth of Madness, which we discussed previously. Right. But I mainly know him as the voice of Ra's al Ghul on Batman the Animated Series. John Irenicus in Baldur's Gate 2. Classic, iconic villain in D&D terms.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can give higher praise than to compare you to David Warner.
Chancellor Gorton.
Yeah. All right. We might go a little over. Forgive us, everybody. Let's talk about the look of this film. So this encompasses everything. We'll do a couple rounds going back and forth. If you don't mind, I'll start with visual effects. Overall, I think the visual effects are really good. I will say the thing that bothered me is I'm going to go back to Reed again. It's like, if you have got it down, like it looked believable when Reed is stretching. It didn't look bad. So it's like, have him do some more stuff. Granted, I've never seen Reed do Plastic Man stuff, which is crazy, but Reed can do quite a bit. And they make Reed look less powerful as power-wise than like Elongated Man in DC. So I mean, it's like, come on. I know he's
I don't disagree with that.
He's got more power than that. But to Silver Surfer, on the other hand, that was fantastic. Watching her surf and the warp, when she's doing that, was amazing. The only complaint I'm going to have about that, and I'm going to kick it over to you, is that they try to be too clever by half in the rendering on Julia Garner and make her look like living metal instead of looking like just metal. The original Silver Surfer movie from 2004, you said?
2007, I want to say.
Okay. They didn't have half of the rendering power and computer graphics that they did now. And so it's a very simple mirror map on top of a person. But I think that looked more comics accurate and better than what they tried to do here. And they probably put tons more work, tons more money, and tons more computing power into rendering Julia Garner's Silver Surfer. So I think that's an unfortunate choice. So it looked better than the trailers. I'll say that. They cleaned it up a lot. But I still think I would have preferred that they do her actually more, have that mirror finish, a really silver finish, instead of this dull, almost like she looked like she should have been on like Tomato from Cars, like a rusted bumper or something. So kind of unfortunate. So anyway, over to you. What did you think first round on visual effects? Anything about what I said or anything you want to add? And we'll go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, I will say, as far as Reed's concerned, I would have liked to seen him do more stretchy things. I don't know if they just didn't have the budget or what, but it's like part of the thing with Reed, you do see the occasional cool thing, like, okay, him falling and hitting rubbery on the ground, and being able to collect himself like nothing happened. Okay, I buy that. That was nice, but other than that, there really wasn't a whole lot there. And it's like, you guys don't realize that part of the thing with Reed is that he has the scientific knowledge to really make use of his powers in creative ways, and they didn't show any of that in this movie. So yeah, I'm getting what you're saying there. I will say I really like that they really made it look like a proper science fiction movie. So it's like they remembered that the Fantastic Four are explorers. They actually had them explore. And when they did this, they did really good jobs with the visual effects, showing these strange vistas, from Galactus's ship to the neutron star that they had to use to get away from the surfer, to trap the surfer.
Right.
All that was really, really good. They did a lot of good work with that.
I'm going to add real quick and then get back to you. We talked about the writing. That was incredible writing, because it's borrowing from a movie like Interstellar. So if you've seen Interstellar, you're already familiar with this concept of the time and every time dilation. But it was like, that was interesting. That was an interesting solution. I was like, okay, I see you, fantastic. I see you, writers. I was like, some people wrote their ass off on this movie. So.
Yeah, it starts. Yeah, they didn't write it like a superhero story. They wrote it like it was like an episode of The Orville or something like that, or like a proper old school Star Trek thing. I'm like, that totally makes sense. They remember Ben Grimm was a pilot. They remember all of this other stuff. So they made that absolutely work, and it worked visually as well.
I like I said, when people do stuff right, we need to shout them out. Who are the writers of this movie?
There were like 4 of them, if I remember right.
Yeah, I want to call them out, because we bag on writing when it's bad. This writing was good. Eric Pearson, Jeff Kaplan, Ian Springer, and Cat Wood. I don't know who you are. And Josh Friedman helped with the screenplay. The story was by those first 4, and then Josh Friedman helped and brought it into screenplay form. Kudos to you. Kudos to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just absolutely fantastic. And I think it's important that we do that, because it's like one of the things we've talked about for years now is that the writing has really been, it felt like it was kind of mailed in sometimes. The writers are they're not the only heroes of this movie, but they deserve their kudos. They did a good job.
Yeah, I think it always has to start with the writing. I mean, everything else is to make the story look good.
Absolutely. And it's funny you should say that. So the next thing I'm going to go to for visual effects is whoever was in charge. I think we're going to talk about this again with DT, and I'm going to have a whole list of the cast and crew of this movie so I can call them all out. Whoever was in charge with artistic design for this movie might deserve an Academy Award. And it wasn't just for the obvious stuff. I mean, obviously we've talked about the look, the 60s retro feel look and everything like that, but little things, well, not little things, but things that wouldn't normally stand out to you, like the design of the Excelsior was fantastic. The way that they designed the FTL drive that the Excelsior goes into, and the look on that, it felt real. It felt lived in. The design of Galactus' ship was alien and functional. All of the design work was on point. So whoever storyboarded it and then came up with the actual design, and then they translated it visual effects, this was good. This was good. So from a pure movie making perspective, that's why it's like, I want to give this movie an A, and maybe it'll grow on me even more. And the only reason I wouldn't is there are a couple small things, and then it's just, not my cup of tea necessarily, but it's not a bad movie at all.
No, not at all.
It's a really good movie. So what did you think about the artistic design?
I think that visually they really got everything right. I mean, in terms of the making everything look the way it needed to, the retro futuristic designs, I think, were really good. I do like the way that they actually did make the ship designs look functional, look like things that might actually have been developed by humans. So, with the Excelsior, and with the FTL sort of drive that they added to it. The launch sequence I thought was really, really good. That looks like something like somebody like Reed Richards would have designed, and it came
However,
really well.
I just want to say this and see if you agree with it. It did look like something human would design, and it looked functional, but it looked just fantastic enough to be, even though this is retro, to be out of our what we can do now and to be comic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's go to. I've seen some people complain and praise this costume design. What do you think of costume design as overall?
I thought it was perfectly fine. I didn't have a they definitely kind of found a way to make it look something straight out of the 60s, and yet there's a newness to it. So a lot of the retro futuristic designs is also very true of the costumes. I do kind of like story wise how they showed that Johnny was involved with some of the stuff that they came in with, and Reed just made it all work somehow. I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I kind of see them they would collaborate on things like that. So all that worked. The way that Galactus's design was great. I think that I will also do one little shout out, and that is for Mark Gatiss as that Tel Gilbert guy. The guy who was basically the Ellen Sullivan of that universe. Gatiss is the guy that I love from Doctor Who and Sherlock and things like that. And it was kind of nice to see him, put on an American accent when he is very, very British, and it doesn't show at all. And he looked like he belonged in that setting, like with the suit and everything. That was great.
Now, I didn't know how I would feel about Kirby being in with everybody, but I thought that it worked, and they made it work real well. And I like the little things they added with adding the new tapes for different functions for Kirby and stuff like that. But there was a little thing in the costume design that I really liked, and it was the fact that they actually had the white collar, or the white top around their suit. Although it was a little weird, and I'm not familiar with Sue being pregnant in the comics, but it was weird to see her have like a maternity costume and then give birth in 0G. I was like,
it didn't happen like that. It did not happen like that in the comics. It was a whole that they mixed together a number of different storylines. The birth of Franklin. Actually, they were fighting Annihilus in the negative zone. Sue, I don't believe, was there.
Okay, it was a little strange, and for a moment there, I was worried that we were going to see way too much of Vanessa Kirby than I really wanted to see in a Fantastic Four movie. So I was like, how graphic are they going to be here with this birth? So,
there was a whole storyline where they had replaced Sue while she gave birth to Franklin. So this is where Crystal came in. Yeah.
Okay. I also know, didn't Ben leave the Fantastic Four and was replaced by She-Hulk at one point or something?
So, yeah, that was in the mid '80s.
Yeah.
That was much later.
Okay. What else can we talk about? So we talked about visual effects. We talked about the story as a general rule. We've talked about the acting and characters. Before we get out of here, I'm just going to ask you a question. And people have asked a lot of times. I've seen this question going around, and I've decided I'm just going to be straight up from now on. And it's like, what makes a movie? Well, people made it a negative. What makes a movie a failure? I'm going to turn around and make it positive. For me, and you can obviously change this if you want, but for me, I've decided now, if I'm going to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, positive or negative rating on a movie, the most important thing for me is just going to be, was I entertained? Is this something that I would go to with my family? Now, I'm going to say for me personally, this movie gets a thumbs up. It entertained me. It was enjoyable. At the end of the day, all the other little quibbles I might have with the movie, any movie, don't matter as long as the movie entertains me, which is its purpose. Even movies that challenge me, if they entertain me, then I'm walking away happy and not regretting my life choices that I gave them money. So for you, how would you define a successful movie, and do you think this movie was successful?
Did I like more than I disliked? I mean, it's like you're always going to have some positives and some negatives with most movies, unless you're dealing with something amazingly good or something horrifically bad. And even then, you're going to find like little things here and there that are kind of worth it. As much as you may not like some, various little things in there.
Right.
But I think in this case, it's like, okay, did I like it more than what I disliked? What I liked about it, they had the core of the Fantastic Four. Spiritually, it was there. Like you had people that really seemed to have reverence for the history of the Fantastic Four as well. You got to see like little references to people like the Mad Thinker, the Red Ghost, and it is a shame that the Red Ghost was cut out of the movie.
Yeah,
because that was John Malkovich. John Malkovich as the Red Ghost sounds like he would have been awesome, and I would like to hopefully when they release the digital version, they'll give us that. But I really like that kind of stuff. I mean, the only thing that I thought was a little bit disappointing was the Mole Man came across as a bit too much of a Disney character, like a Disney comic relief character. I'm like, oh, come on, do we have enough to have another one of those? But other than that, I was just like, this made like people who seem like they actually care about the Fantastic Four, which is more than I can say about like the Thunderbolts, which use absolutely nothing of the comic whatsoever. And was basically like, yeah, let's rebrand all these other minor characters from Black Widow and put them into a team and call them that. There was none of that. This one actually looked like they had not only read a comic, but actually enjoyed the comics that they had read, and were trying to basically adapt the things they liked in those comics. That is in this movie.
Cool.
There's a lot. Yeah, I mean, I may not like what they did to the Silver Surfer. I may not like the Mole Man. I may not like, the fact that they, basically cut Alicia Masters out of the movie and misused Natasha Lyonne. But, those are quibbles in the end. It had the 4-4. That's what this movie is about. It's about those 4 characters and their journey. It was all there. Yeah. I can recommend it on that basis.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that... I think it's, like I said, it's important for us to recognize the good stuff and to bottom line it, where it's like you can critique stuff, and I've been at this criticism game for a while on comics and stuff like that. And I think that you could fall into this trap where you become a critic first and a fan second. And I don't want to live my life like that, I will critique stuff and be a critic, but at the end of the day, I want to be a consumer and a fan as well. So I enjoyed it. I
just want to have fun. I just want to have fun with my entertainment. I'm just not really into all the the bickering about extraneous stuff and culture war nonsense and things like that. I just want to enjoy my movie.
And I enjoyed it, and I will be right out front. I am a DC fan first, so it's all right, DC fanboys. You don't have to be a Snyder cultist to like this movie. I will say that one, and we'll just leave that at that. You're not betraying DC. You can enjoy this movie and still love DC. So, and vice versa, by the way. So,
I'm a massive Superman fan, and I love Christopher Reeve. I also really love the Fantastic Four, and the John Byrne run on Fantastic Four was like one of my earliest comic experiences, and it got me into Marvel.
Yeah, and you can enjoy it all until Hellboy puts on his crown and becomes a Nonga Rama, the right hand of doom, and destroys your whole world. So there it is. So with that, I think that wraps up our Fantastic Four review. Like I said, we had to call a little audible. We will be back next week. Right now, we're still planning on doing Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It should be an interesting discussion. I had never seen this movie before, so I've got some definite thoughts. I'm curious to see what Steve thinks of it once he gets a chance to see it. And we're going to be on the sci-fi kick for a little bit longer. And then somewhere around the middle of September, we're going to shift into horror movie mode. But actually, one of the things I like about the fact that we kicked this off, or we pushed it back till next week, is I didn't get a chance to do it this week. I felt it was time, especially since we have done so many of this man's movies on the channel. I'm going to put together a little Donald Sutherland retrospective that we can look back on some of his best moments, because he has entertained us in any number of movies. movies. So
Absolutely.
we will do that as well. So that will be next week, though. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and a little look back at Donald Sutherland and all of the wonderful moments he's given us over the years. And I want to thank you, Steve, for being here, for doing this audible with me and jumping right in. And we're doing a Fantastic Four. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, it really was fun getting into this movie, and actually, like, for once, talking about a movie we liked and a superhero movie that we liked. I mean, this is not something that happens very often, my friends.
Yeah. I will also say, everybody, make sure you check out Fellowship of the D20 channel, where we do a game stream every Sunday afternoon. That would be Pacific time. Go check that out. I am doing NIM in the AM on Pilled from Madness Comics Networks in the morning. I'm also now the host of What's Your Issue on Madness on Fridays. So, and I've got a new comic coming out soon. Go check out The Dread by Mike Nunley on Amazon.com. Go look at that.
Edited by me.
Yeah. Anything you got out there to sell the people at the moment, Steve?
Not really at the moment. I do have some projects that are in the works, but nothing I'm kind of ready to really talk about. I will say that I will be looking forward to our games both this week and next week, because we're going to both be DMs at various times is the plan right now.
Yeah, so go check those out. Make sure you do all that. Support Comic Crusaders, support Fellowship of D20, support the Madness Entertainment Group. And until then, you all have a great weekend. Hey, go out there and enjoy your weekend. Enjoy whatever you're consuming and taking part in, or whatever you're doing. Have a great life. Until then, on behalf of Steve and myself, I want to say thank you to all of you. And I'm going to find the video so we can get out of here. And we are out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, 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 bye.